My name is Samantha Mitchell, and I'm 29 years old. On what should have been the happiest morning of my life, I walked in on my fiancé James tangled in bed sheets with Kimberly, my maid of honor and best friend since college. 6 hours before our wedding. With one phone call, I transformed my devastation into the most empowering moment of my life. Before I tell you how my perfect fairy tale crumbled before my eyes, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, hit subscribe, and get ready for a story about betrayal and the ultimate comeback. I grew up in a middle-class family in Pennsylvania, where my parents taught me the value of hard work and integrity. After graduating with honors in interior design, I moved to Boston and spent 7 years building my reputation. My small design firm finally started gaining traction with upscale clients, and I felt like my professional life was on track. What was missing was someone to share it with. That changed 3 years ago at a charity gala for children's education. I was there representing my firm, which had donated design services for the event. I was arranging centerpieces when I heard a deep voice behind me. The blue flowers against the silver settings, it's striking. You have an eye for detail. I turned to find James Wilson, tall with warm brown eyes and a smile that made my heart flutter. He was handsome in that classic way, tailored suit, confident posture, and a genuine interest in my work that wasn't just small talk. As a corporate attorney for a prestigious firm, he moved through the gala with ease, introducing me to potential clients. By midnight, we were sharing dessert and laughing like old friends. Our romance was a whirlwind. Weekend trips to coastal towns, surprise lunches at my office, and thoughtful gifts that showed he was paying attention. 6 months in, he took me to meet his parents in their Connecticut home, and they welcomed me warmly. My parents adored him when he drove to Pennsylvania just to ask for their blessing, something traditional that touched my father deeply. Throughout those early days, Kimberly Taylor was my confidant. We'd met in college, both struggling art students sharing instant ramen and dreams. While I focused on interior spaces, she pursued fashion design. Our friendship survived my move to Boston because she followed shortly after, taking a job with a local boutique. When I met James, Kimberly was the first person I called. "He sounds too good to be true," she'd said, but with excitement in her voice. "I need to meet this guy and make sure he deserves my best friend." The dinner where they met seemed perfect. James charmed her with stories about his pro bono work for artists securing intellectual property rights. Kimberly gave her approval over wine after he left. "That man looks at you like you're the answer to a question he's been asking his whole life." For 2 years, Kimberly was there for every milestone. She helped me choose the perfect outfit for meeting James' parents. She took candid photos when he surprised me with keys to our new condo. And she was there the night James proposed. The proposal was everything I'd dreamed of without realizing it. James reserved the entire rooftop of the restaurant where we had our first date. Candles created a path to a small table overlooking the city lights. He'd arranged for my favorite dessert, creme brulee with fresh berries, and hidden the ring beneath a silver dome. When I lifted it, he was already on one knee. "Samantha Mitchell, you've redesigned my heart and rebuilt my understanding of love. Will you marry me?" Kimberly was hiding nearby, capturing the moment on camera. She rushed out to congratulate us, tears in her eyes that I believed were joy for me. We celebrated until midnight, the 3 of us and a bottle of champagne, planning the wedding already. The next year was a blur of venue tours, cake tastings, and wedding expos. I wanted something elegant but warm, like our relationship. We chose a historic estate with gardens for the ceremony and a renovated barn for the reception. James gave input but trusted my design instincts. Kimberly was invaluable, using her connections in fashion to help me find the perfect dress, a vintage-inspired gown with delicate beading and a sweetheart neckline. Looking back, I should have noticed the subtle shifts. James started working later, claiming a difficult case needed his attention. Our passionate nights became less frequent, attributed to wedding stress. Kimberly began canceling our traditional Sunday brunches, citing deadline pressure from her boutique. There were moments that should have raised flags. Finding James quickly ending a phone call when I entered our condo. Kimberly's strange reaction when I asked her to try on her bridesmaid dress. Reluctance followed by overly enthusiastic compliments about my wedding planning. At my bachelorette weekend, she seemed distracted, checking her phone constantly. Work emergency, she explained, but wouldn't meet my eyes. The night before the wedding, we had dinner with all 6 bridesmaids. Kimberly made a beautiful toast to finding a love that makes you better and recognizing it when it appears. Her voice cracked on the last words, which I interpreted as emotional support for my big day. We parted ways at 11, Kimberly heading to her hotel room, me to my parents' house for the traditional night apart from the groom. James texted me, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Sweet dreams, almost wife." I barely slept, too excited about what lay ahead. My mother helped me with my hair and makeup early the next morning, a special pre-wedding moment for just us. When we finished, I hugged her. "I'm going to surprise James with breakfast before things get crazy," I told her. "A little tradition of my own." "Are you sure?" she asked. "It's bad luck to see the groom before the wedding." I laughed. "We make our own luck, Mom." I picked up croissants from James' favorite bakery and drove to the hotel where he and his groomsmen were staying. The morning was bright, birds singing as if celebrating with me. I hummed our first dance song in the elevator, balancing coffee and pastries, imagining James' face when I surprised him. I had a key card, we'd booked the suite together months ago. I slid it into the door quietly, wanting to catch him still sleeping, maybe snap a cute photo of my groom on wedding morning. The suite was silent except for sounds from the bedroom, sounds that made me pause. My stomach twisted as I recognized a woman's muffled laugh. A laugh I'd known for over a decade. The breakfast tray trembled in my hands as I stood in the suite's entryway. Perhaps there was an innocent explanation. Maybe Kimberly had come early to discuss wedding details. But the sounds, intimate whispers and movement against sheets, told a different story. I moved forward in a dreamlike state, as if watching myself from above. The door to the bedroom wasn't fully closed. With one finger, I pushed it open. The morning light streamed through half-drawn curtains, illuminating the betrayal in vivid detail. James, my James, had his arms wrapped around Kimberly, her dark hair spilled across the pillows I'd helped pick out for our new home. They were so engrossed in each other they didn't notice me immediately. I saw James kiss her neck, whisper something that made her smile, a private joke between lovers. The coffee cups crashed first when the tray slipped from my numb fingers. Hot liquid splashed across the plush carpet. The shattering sound jerked them apart, their faces turning toward me with matching expressions of horror. "Samantha." James scrambled to cover himself, tangling in the sheets. "This isn't, I can explain." Kimberly clutched the comforter to her chest, her makeup from last night smudged around eyes now wide with panic. "Sam, oh my God, I'm so sorry." I couldn't speak. My throat had closed, lungs refusing to work. The room tilted slightly as if the earth had shifted on its axis, and hadn't it? My entire world was collapsing in this hotel room, 6 hours before I was supposed to say I do. James stumbled out of bed, hastily pulling on boxers. "Baby, please, this was a mistake." "It didn't mean anything." "Didn't mean anything?" My voice returned, strange and hollow. "You're in bed with my best friend on our wedding day." I was stressed about the wedding, he stammered, reaching for me. "It just happened." I stepped back, bumping into the doorframe. "Things don't just happen, James. People make choices." Kimberly was crying now, mascara tracks down her cheeks. "Sam, I never meant to hurt you. We were drunk last night after the rehearsal dinner." One thing led to another. "Stop." The word came out sharper than I'd ever spoken to her. "Don't pretend this is the first time." Their exchanged glance confirmed my suspicion. The room suddenly felt airless. "How long?" I demanded. James looked at the floor. "Sam, does it matter?" "It was a mistake." "How long?" Kimberly's voice was barely audible. 7 months. 7 months. My mind raced backward, calculating. While I was choosing wedding invitations. During my final dress fitting. When James had taken that business trip to New York that coincided with Kimberly's fashion event. The weekend you said your flight was delayed in Chicago? I asked him. He flinched. You were with her, weren't you? Kimberly started sobbing. We tried to end it so many times. We never wanted to hurt you. A hysterical laugh escaped me. You're sleeping with my fiancé on my wedding day. How exactly did you think that wouldn't hurt me? James approached, hands outstretched pleadingly. Samantha, we can work through this. The wedding. The wedding? Reality crashed back. 200 guests would begin arriving in hours. My parents had spent a small fortune. My dress hung ready in my childhood bedroom. You still think there's going to be a wedding? My voice rose. Are you insane? People make mistakes, he said desperately. We can postpone, get counseling. This isn't a mistake, James. A mistake is sending the wrong email or burning dinner. This is a deliberate betrayal by the two people I trusted most. I turned to Kimberly, who couldn't meet my eyes. You helped me choose a dress to marry him in. You planned my bachelorette party. You stood there yesterday at the rehearsal dinner and raised a toast to our happiness. How could you? I hated myself every day, she whispered. But I couldn't stop. I love him, Sam. The words hit like a physical blow. Love. Not just sex or a thrill or a mistake. Love. I thought of Kimberly's strange toast the night before, the emotion in her voice as she spoke about recognizing love. She hadn't been talking about me and James. She'd been talking about herself. You need to call and cancel everything, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Every vendor, every guest. You two created this mess. You can clean it up. I turned to leave, suddenly desperate for fresh air. Sam, wait. James grabbed my arm. Where are you going? We need to talk about this. I yanked away from him. Don't touch me. Don't call me. Don't try to explain. Please, Kimberly sobbed, clutching the sheet around her as she stood. Sam, you're my best friend. No, I said quietly. I'm not. I don't know who either of you are. I walked out, closing the door on their continued pleas. In the elevator, I stared at my reflection in the polished doors, hair done for my wedding day, the beginning of bridal makeup, wearing jeans and a t-shirt I'd thrown on for my breakfast surprise. My phone began buzzing in my pocket before I reached the lobby. James calling. Then Kimberly. Then my mother, probably wondering where I was. I silenced it and walked through the lobby, past smiling hotel staff who had no idea the bride had just discovered there wouldn't be a wedding after all. I drove aimlessly, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Traffic lights changed, people crossed streets, the world continued its normal rhythm while mine had shattered. Eventually, I found myself in an empty supermarket parking lot, my car the only one in the row. The first sob caught me by surprise, a violent, guttural sound I didn't recognize as my own. Then another. And another, until I was gasping for breath, folded over the steering wheel. Images flashed through my mind, James' face when he proposed. Kimberly helping me choose wedding flowers. The two of them together in that bed. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I finally looked at it, 27 missed calls. Texts from bridesmaids asking about hair appointments. Messages from James, please come back. We can fix this. From Kimberly, I'm so sorry. Please let me explain. A text from my mother made me pause. Honey, where are you? Is everything okay? What would I tell her? How could I explain that the wedding she'd helped plan for a year wasn't happening because my fiancé and maid of honor had been having an affair for months? The humiliation burned through my grief. 200 guests would know. Colleagues, extended family, friends from college, all would learn about my humiliation. I tried to compose a message to my mother but couldn't find the words. What do you say when your life implodes? Wedding cancelled. Caught James cheating with Kimberly. Too blunt. Not feeling well, need time. Too vague. I stared at my engagement ring, a 2-carat emerald-cut diamond that had belonged to James' grandmother. He'd told me it symbolized our future family legacy. Now it felt like a brand of my naivety. My phone rang again, my father this time. I couldn't ignore him. Sammy? His voice was concerned. Your mother says you disappeared. The hairstylist is here. Dad. My voice broke. I can't, the wedding. What's wrong, sweetheart? Are you hurt? James and Kimberly. I could barely form the words. I found them together. At the hotel. A long silence followed. Then, together? You mean? In bed, Dad. They've been having an affair. I heard his sharp intake of breath, followed by muffled words as he presumably told my mother. Her exclamation of shock came through faintly. Where are you? He asked, voice tight with controlled anger. We'll come get you. I just need some time. I don't know what to do about everyone coming to the wedding. Don't worry about that right now. That's not your problem. But it felt like my problem. My failure. Had I been blind? Self-absorbed in wedding details while missing the betrayal happening right in front of me? I remembered conversations with James about children, about growing old together. Whispered promises in the dark. Had they all been lies? Or had his feelings changed? Was I not enough? Questions swirled, each more painful than the last. And Kimberly. My friend since we were teenagers with braces and dreams. Who'd held my hair back when I was sick, who knew all my secrets? Had she laughed at me behind my back? Had they mocked my excitement about the wedding? The anger came slowly, building beneath the hurt. Anger at their betrayal, but also at myself for not seeing it. For being the fool in this story. My phone chimed with a text from James, the vendors are starting to arrive at the venue. What should I tell them? Reality crashed back. Tens of thousands of dollars, non-refundable deposits, arrangements made months in advance. The caterer preparing food for 200. The photographer setting up equipment. The florist delivering centerpieces and bouquets. I got out of my car, needing air. The June morning was perfect for a wedding, sunny, mild, with a gentle breeze. I'd chosen the date specifically for the weather. Now it felt like nature was mocking me. In the distance, a news van from the local network pulled into the far end of the parking lot, probably covering some nearby event. The sight of it triggered a memory. Alexander Grant, the investigative reporter I'd met at a networking event 3 months ago. We'd bonded over being women in male-dominated fields, exchanged cards, promised to have coffee. She'd mentioned working on a segment about wedding industry practices, vendors who took advantage of couples, hidden fees, contract loopholes. She'd asked if I had any interesting wedding planning stories to share. At the time, I'd laughed and said my planning had been surprisingly smooth. I stared at the news van, a wild idea forming. What if instead of hiding in shame, I took control of the narrative? What if instead of a cancelled wedding, I created something else entirely? I pulled out Alexander's business card, still in my wallet. Was I really considering this? It seemed extreme, possibly cruel. But as I thought about James and Kimberly continuing their affair while helping me plan my wedding, the depth of their deception, something hardened inside me. I deserved better than being their victim. I deserved more than slinking away in humiliation while they crafted explanations and apologies. I took a deep breath and made my decision. Enough tears. I wasn't going to let them destroy this day I'd planned for so long. It just wouldn't be the day any of us had expected. I pulled up Alexander's contact and pressed call, my hand steady for the first time since discovering the betrayal. As the phone rang, I straightened my shoulders, preparing to transform from abandoned bride to something much more powerful. Alexandra answered on the third ring. Alexandra Grant speaking. Alexandra, it's Samantha Mitchell. We met at the Women in Business Mixer a few months ago. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. I don't know if you remember me. Of course I remember you. The interior designer getting married this summer, right? How are you? I laughed hollowly. Actually, that's why I'm calling. I'm supposed to be getting married today. Supposed to be? Her reporter's instinct caught my phrasing immediately. 3 hours ago, I found my fiancé in bed with my maid of honor. Oh my God, Samantha. I'm so sorry. Her tone was genuine, but I could hear the professional interest underneath. That's horrible. Remember that segment you mentioned about the wedding industry? I think I might have a more interesting angle for you. I could practically hear her leaning forward. I'm listening. 200 guests are about to arrive at Winston Estate for my wedding. The groom and maid of honor have been having an affair for months while helping me plan it. What if instead of a wedding, they got something else entirely? What did you have in mind? My plan poured out, raw, only half-formed, but Alexandra caught the vision immediately. She asked sharp questions, adding professional elements I hadn't considered. Within minutes, we had outlined a strategy that made my heart race with nervous energy. I can have a crew there in 40 minutes, she said. Small team, discreet. We'll pose as additional videographers for the ceremony until it's time. Are you absolutely sure about this, Samantha? Once we start, there's no going back. Was I sure? I thought about the years I'd invested in James. The friendship with Kimberly I'd treasured since college. The trust they'd violated. The public humiliation awaiting me if I simply cancelled. I'm sure, I said firmly. They chose to betray me together. They can face the consequences together. After arranging details with Alexandra, I made 2 more crucial calls. First to my mother, giving her a condensed version of what happened and my new plan. Her initial shock gave way to fierce support. Those 2 deserve everything coming to them, she said, anger evident in her usually gentle voice. Your father and I are with you, whatever you decide. Next, I called Melissa, the one bridesmaid I trusted completely. We'd been neighbors for years, and she'd always been skeptical of Kimberly's sometimes possessive friendship with me. Her outrage matched my mother's, and she readily agreed to help coordinate with my other bridesmaids, minus Kimberly. What about your dress? She asked. Do you still want to wear it? I hadn't considered that. The dress I'd chosen to begin a life with James now seemed tainted. But the thought of facing this moment in anything less than my best felt wrong. Yes, I decided. I bought that dress for me, not him. And I'm going to look incredible in it. Next came calls to key vendors, the officiant, DJ, and venue coordinator, giving them minimal but sufficient information to adjust the day's schedule. Most were professionally sympathetic, having seen their share of wedding day disasters. The officiant, a kind woman in her 60s, was particularly supportive. Honey, I've seen marriages fail after 20 years, but at least you found out before signing the papers. That's a blessing in disguise. A blessing. Not how I would have described my morning, but her perspective shifted something in my thinking. Maybe this painful discovery was saving me from years of deception and eventual heartbreak. With the framework in place, I drove to Melissa's apartment where several bridesmaids had gathered, all now informed of the situation and my plans. Their reactions ranged from shocked disbelief to vengeful enthusiasm. They helped me finish my hair and makeup, the ritual taking on new meaning, war paint rather than bridal glow. My phone continued buzzing with messages from James and Kimberly, growing increasingly frantic as the ceremony time approached. I read one from James, the florist is here. Your parents aren't answering my calls. Please tell me what to do. I smiled slightly, imagining his panic as he realized he couldn't smooth-talk his way out of this situation. I typed a brief reply, I'll be there soon. Tell everyone the ceremony is delayed by 30 minutes. Kimberly's messages I deleted without reading. Whatever excuses or explanations she offered couldn't change what I'd seen with my own eyes. As I slipped into my wedding dress, ivory satin with delicate beading that caught the light with every movement, I studied my reflection. I looked like a bride, but felt like someone else entirely. Someone stronger, with edges hardened by betrayal. "You look beautiful," my mother said, appearing behind me in the mirror. She'd arrived to help with final preparations, her eyes still red-rimmed but determined. "And more importantly, you look strong." I hugged her carefully, avoiding smudging my makeup. "Thank you for supporting me in this. I know it's not what you imagined for today." "What I imagined was your happiness," she said firmly. "And I believe you'll find that again, just not with him." Alexandra texted that her team was in position, disguised as part of the photography crew. They'd set up additional cameras at strategic points around the venue, ready to capture everything. I took a deep breath, checking the time. Guests would be seated now. James would be standing at the altar, perhaps believing I'd decided to forgive him, or that I was too embarrassed to call off the wedding at the last minute. Kimberly would be with the bridesmaids, playing her role as maid of honor, maybe thinking she'd gotten away with it. They had no idea what was coming. "Ready?" Melissa asked, holding my bouquet, white roses and lilies that suddenly seemed too pure for the occasion. I nodded, accepting the flowers. "Ready." As we loaded into the wedding party's limousine, I felt an unexpected calm settle over me. The devastation and shock had transformed into something more purposeful. This wasn't the happy ending I'd planned, but it would be an ending on my terms. I sent one final text to Alexandra, "On my way. Operation Truth or Consequences is a go." The Winston estate looked like a fairy tale setting as our limousine approached. White chairs arranged in perfect rows on the manicured lawn. An arch of flowers marking the altar space. String quartet playing softly as guests mingled, unaware of the drama about to unfold. From the privacy of the bridal suite, I watched through lace curtains as James paced nervously near the altar, checking his watch repeatedly. He'd changed into his wedding tuxedo, the one I'd helped him choose, midnight blue with a subtle pattern in the vest. He kept glancing toward the estate entrance, his face a mask of tension. Kimberly stood with the other bridesmaids, wearing the sage green dress that complemented her dark hair. She appeared composed on the surface, but I noticed her hands constantly fidgeting with her bouquet. The other bridesmaids, now all aware of what had happened, maintained a cold distance from her that she clearly found unsettling. Alexandra approached me, discreetly dressed like one of the venue's coordinators, with a small communication device tucked behind her ear. "We're set," she confirmed quietly. "Cameras are positioned at all key points. The primary crew is embedded with the wedding videographers. We've got a second team at the reception barn for afterward. Are you still sure about this?" I nodded, surprising myself with my steadiness. "Absolutely. Your mic is sewn into your bouquet," she explained, pointing to the tiny black dot nestled among the roses. "It will pick up everything clearly within about 10 feet of you. Try to position yourself centrally when you make your announcement." The wedding coordinator, the real one, knocked softly before entering. "Everyone seated, Samantha. Your father is waiting to walk you down the aisle. Are you ready?" I took a deep breath. Just one small change to the program. After my father and I reach the altar, I'll need the microphone before the officiant begins. She looked surprised but nodded. "Of course. It's your wedding." Not anymore, I thought. My father waited in the hallway, handsome in his tuxedo, his face a complex mixture of pride and controlled anger. He'd always treated James like the son he never had. The betrayal had hit him hard too. "You don't have to go through with this plan," he said quietly as he took my arm. "We can still walk away, make some excuse. Deal with it privately." "No, Dad." I squeezed his hand. "They don't get to hide what they did. They don't get to control the story." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Then let's give them a show they'll never forget." The music changed to the traditional wedding march. Guests rose from their seats, turning expectantly toward the back of the aisle. The doors opened, and with my father by my side, I began the walk I'd rehearsed just yesterday, now with an entirely different destination in mind. I kept my eyes forward, not looking at the guests, though I could feel their admiring smiles. I looked every bit the radiant bride in my dream dress, professional makeup, and perfectly styled hair. Only those closest to me could see the determination that had replaced wedding day jitters. James' face relaxed visibly as I approached, relief washing over his features. He clearly thought the crisis had passed, that I'd decided to forgive him, or at least postpone our reckoning until after the ceremony. The smug confidence in his expression only strengthened my resolve. When we reached the altar, my father did not place my hand in James as rehearsed. Instead, he kissed my cheek and stepped back, taking a position beside my mother in the front row. James extended his hand toward me, confusion flickering across his face when I didn't take it. The officiant stepped forward, but before she could speak, I turned to the wedding coordinator, who promptly handed me the microphone as arranged. A murmur of confusion rippled through the guests. This wasn't part of a traditional ceremony. James leaned toward me, whispering urgently, "What are you doing?" I faced our assembled friends and family, the microphone steady in my hand. From the corner of my eye, I saw Alexandra's team subtly adjusting cameras. "Thank you all for coming today," I began, my voice clear and controlled. "I know many of you traveled far to be here, and I'm grateful for your presence. However, this isn't going to be the celebration you expected." The murmuring grew louder. James grabbed my elbow, his fingers digging in painfully. "Samantha, what are you doing?" he hissed. "We can talk about this later." I pulled away from him, continuing. 3 hours ago, I went to surprise my fiancé with breakfast. Instead, I was surprised to find him in bed with my maid of honor, Kimberly. Gasps echoed across the lawn. All eyes turned to Kimberly, who had gone deathly pale, her bouquet slipping from her fingers. James stepped forward, reaching for the microphone, but my father and 2 of his friends immediately moved to block him. "What I discovered," I continued, "wasn't a one-time mistake. They've been carrying on an affair for 7 months, while helping me plan this very wedding." The large screens intended for displaying wedding photos during the reception now lit up with text messages between James and Kimberly, messages Alexandra's team had helped me retrieve and compile from the cloud backup of my laptop, where James had occasionally used my messaging apps. Their explicit content and timestamps appeared in damning detail. "Planning a spring wedding while you're sleeping with the bride's best friend might seem challenging," I said, my voice taking on a documentary-like tone, but apparently these 2 managed it quite efficiently. James lunged toward the tech booth, but security, arranged by Alexandra, intercepted him. "Turn those off," he shouted, his composed attorney persona completely shattered. Kimberly had sunk into a chair, sobbing openly as former friends moved away from her like she was contagious. My mother stared at her with undisguised contempt. I moved to the center of the aisle as Alexandra had suggested, making sure the cameras captured everything. I considered quietly canceling. Hiding away in shame while sending everyone home. But then I realized, I've done nothing wrong. I have nothing to be ashamed of. A chorus of supportive comments rose from the guests, many now standing. "Instead of a wedding celebration, I invite you all to witness something more valuable, the truth. And a lesson about consequences." I turned to James, who had finally gone still, ashen-faced as he realized the magnitude of what was happening. "James Wilson, you told me you valued honesty above all else. That was clearly a lie. You presented yourself as someone worthy of trust and commitment. Another lie." I removed my engagement ring and held it out. When he didn't move to take it, I simply dropped it onto the grass between us. "The caterers have been instructed to serve the reception meal as planned," I announced to the guests. "Consider it a celebration of dodging a bullet. I've also arranged for all wedding gifts to be donated to the Sunrise Women's Shelter, supporting those rebuilding their lives after abusive relationships." I turned to where Alexandra now stood openly with her microphone, her cameraman no longer pretending to be part of the wedding team. For those just tuning in, she said smoothly, stepping into frame, I'm Alexandra Grant with Channel 8 News, here at what was supposed to be the Wilson-Mitchell wedding. Instead, we're witnessing an extraordinary moment of empowerment as Samantha Mitchell addresses her fiancé's betrayal with her best friend. James finally found his voice, rushing toward the camera. You can't air this. I'll sue the network. This is defamation. Actually, Alexandra countered calmly, truth is an absolute defense against defamation claims. And we have plenty of evidence supporting Ms. Mitchell's account, including testimony from hotel staff and your own text messages. James' parents had approached during the commotion, his mother in tears, his father's face rigid with controlled fury. What have you done, James? His father demanded. I handed the microphone back to the coordinator and turned to leave, my part in this drama complete. As I walked back down the aisle, alone this time, guests reached out to touch my shoulders, murmuring support and admiration. Melissa fell into step beside me, linking her arm with mine. That was the most badass thing I've ever seen, she whispered. I felt lighter with each step, the weight of betrayal still present but no longer crushing. Behind me, I could hear James arguing with his parents, Kimberly's continued sobs, and the excited buzz of guests processing what they'd witnessed. Alexandra caught up with us at the estate entrance. That was incredible, Samantha. This segment will air tonight at 6, and I promise you, it's going to resonate with a lot of people. I nodded, suddenly exhausted but satisfied. Thank you for helping me take control of my story. As we reached the limousine waiting to take me away, I turned for one last look at the wedding that wasn't. The beautiful setting, the flowers, the carefully planned details, all now part of a very different kind of memory. I'd entered the estate grounds as a bride preparing to make vows based on lies. I was leaving as a woman who had found her voice and her power in the most unexpected way. The limousine door closed behind me, and I leaned back against the leather seat, finally allowing myself a moment of quiet reflection. The day wasn't over, there would be statements to make, questions to answer, emotions to process. But for now, I had reclaimed my narrative. And that felt like victory. The following morning, I woke in my childhood bedroom to the sound of my phone continuously chiming with notifications. Rolling over, I squinted at the screen, hundreds of messages, thousands of social media alerts, and missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Alexandra's segment had aired last night as promised. I hadn't watched it live, instead, I'd gathered with my parents and closest friends for a quiet dinner, deliberately keeping my phone off. But apparently, the story had resonated far beyond our local network. Jilted bride exposes cheating fiancé and maid of honor live at wedding read one headline. Woman turns wedding disaster into empowerment moment proclaimed another. The video had gone viral overnight, already at several million views across platforms. Melissa called as I was scrolling through the headlines. Have you seen it? You're trending everywhere. People are calling you a hero. I wasn't sure how to feel about that. I didn't do it to become famous, I said quietly. I just couldn't let them control the narrative. Well, you definitely succeeded there. The comment sections are wild, women sharing their own betrayal stories, thanking you for giving them courage. Oh, and James' law firm has put out a statement. That caught my attention. What did they say? That they're reviewing the situation and he's been placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. Turns out they don't love having a partner who gets exposed cheating on national television. Makes them look bad. I hadn't considered the professional consequences for James. His reputation had been carefully cultivated, the ethical attorney, community volunteer, family man in the making. That image was shattered now. My parents brought me coffee and toast, treating me with the gentle care usually reserved for illness. My father handed me the local newspaper, our story featured prominently on the front page. You've started something bigger than you intended, he said, pointing to a sidebar about infidelity and betrayal. They're calling it a cultural moment. I wasn't sure I wanted to be a cultural moment. I just wanted to process my grief privately. But the phone kept ringing with interview requests, and my email filled with messages from strangers sharing their own stories of betrayal. By afternoon, Alexandra called with an update. "The response is unprecedented," she said excitedly. "The network wants to expand this into a special series about betrayal and empowerment. Your story would be the cornerstone, but we'd feature others too. Would you consider being involved?" I hesitated. "I need time to think about it." "Of course," she said quickly. "But there's something else you should know. James has been trying to control the damage. He's hired a crisis management team and is pushing a narrative that you orchestrated a publicity stunt because of wedding day jitters." Anger flared through me. Even now, he was trying to manipulate the truth. "Send me the interview details," I decided. I'm not letting him rewrite history. Over the next week, the story continued gaining traction. I received flowers from strangers, letters from women thanking me for inspiring them to leave toxic relationships, even a book deal offer from a major publisher. Meanwhile, James launched his counter-narrative campaign. In carefully worded statements, he acknowledged a serious lapse in judgment but characterized it as a one-time mistake blown out of proportion. He positioned himself as the victim of public shaming, suggesting my actions were disproportionate to his human error. Kimberly took a different approach, deleting all social media accounts and reportedly leaving the city to stay with relatives in Colorado. Through a brief written statement, she expressed profound regret for the pain caused and asked for privacy. The response to James' campaign was swift and largely negative. His attempt to minimize the betrayal only highlighted his narcissism. Comments flooded news articles and social media posts. "She caught you in bed with her best friend on your wedding day and you think she overreacted? This guy still doesn't get it." Typical gaslighting from someone who got caught. His law firm's review concluded with James taking an extended leave of absence, effectively pushed out without the messiness of a formal termination. Several clients had apparently threatened to withdraw their business if he remained. 2 weeks after what should have been my wedding day, I sat down with Alexandra for a formal interview, my first and only public statement. I wore a simple blue dress, my engagement ring noticeably absent. Looking back, Alexandra asked, "Do you have any regrets about how you handled the situation?" I considered the question carefully. I regret trusting 2 people who didn't deserve it. I regret not seeing the signs earlier. But exposing the truth? No, I don't regret that. Women are conditioned to suffer betrayal quietly, to protect the feelings and reputations of those who hurt us. I chose a different path. The interview aired as part of a 1-hour special titled Betrayal and Beyond. It featured stories from other women who had faced similar situations but hadn't found their voice as I had. The ratings were exceptional, and Alexandra's series was approved for an extended run. My interior design business, which I'd feared might suffer from the publicity, instead experienced an unexpected boom. Female clients specifically sought me out, expressing solidarity through their patronage. One prominent developer hired me for a major commercial project, telling me privately that my story had given her the courage to leave her emotionally abusive husband. 3 months after the non-wedding, I received a hand-delivered letter from James, his first direct communication since that day. For hours, I left it unopened on my kitchen counter, unsure if I wanted to read his words. Finally, curiosity won out. The letter was 8 pages of expensive stationery, filled with elaborate apologies, explanations about his emotional confusion, and thinly veiled attempts to reopen communication. The final paragraph revealed his true purpose. He wanted me to make a public statement clarifying that his affair had been brief and that he was genuinely sorry, to help rehabilitate his damaged reputation. I shredded the letter without responding. Kimberly's attempt at reconciliation came a month later, a tearful voicemail asking if we could meet to heal and find closure. I deleted it immediately. Some betrayals cut too deep for healing. 6 months post-exposure, I was invited to speak at a women's empowerment conference. Standing before hundreds of attendees, I shared not just the dramatic wedding day revelation, but the harder, quieter work that followed, rebuilding trust in my own judgment, processing grief for relationships I'd valued, learning to be vulnerable again without becoming cynical. The viral moment wasn't the victory, I told the audience. The victory is in each day I choose not to let betrayal define me. The victory is in recognizing my worth isn't determined by someone else's inability to be faithful. The applause was thunderous, but more meaningful were the conversations afterward, women sharing their journeys, their struggles to reclaim their narratives after betrayal. Through Alexandra's series, I connected with a network of others who understood the unique pain of intimate betrayal. We formed an informal support group, meeting monthly to share challenges and progress. These women became unexpected friends, their perspectives helping me process my experiences in new ways. One evening over dinner, Melissa asked if I'd heard the latest about James and Kimberly. I hadn't. I'd deliberately stopped following news about them. They're dating publicly now, she said cautiously, trying to spin it as a love story that began with complicated timing. I was surprised by my own reaction, not pain or anger, but something close to pity. They deserve each other, I said, and meant it. The truth was, I was too busy rebuilding to dwell on their choices. My design business had expanded to a second location. The book deal had evolved into a thoughtful memoir about betrayal and resilience, currently in final edits. And most surprisingly, I had begun cautiously dating again, not seeking a replacement relationship, but open to new connections. As the one-year mark approached, media interest in my story resurged. I declined most interviews, but agreed to a brief follow-up with Alexandra, who had become a friend. If you could send a message to yourself from a year ago, standing in that hotel room with the breakfast tray, what would you say? She asked as our cameras wrapped. I smiled, considering the woman I'd been then and the one I'd become. I'd tell her that what feels like an ending is actually a beginning. That the pain won't last forever. And that one day, she'll look back and recognize that phone call as the moment she chose herself. 1 year to the day after what should have been my wedding, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment overlooking the city. The space was entirely mine, designed with only my preferences in mind, no compromises necessary. Clean lines, bold art pieces, and comfortable furniture in shades of blue and gray. A home that reflected who I'd become. The journey to this peaceful moment hadn't been linear. There were days when grief ambushed me, not for James specifically, but for the future I'd imagined. Days when anger flared unexpectedly, or when trust seemed like an impossible concept. But those days grew less frequent as months passed. Therapy had been essential to my healing process. Dr. Caroline Warren helped me examine patterns I'd missed, how I'd often prioritized others' needs above my own, how I'd ignored intuition in favor of maintaining peace. We worked through the shame that lingered despite my public stance, the irrational but persistent feeling that I should have somehow prevented the betrayal. Betrayal trauma is unique, she explained during an early session. It undermines your basic understanding of reality. The people you trusted most were presenting a false version of your life. It's natural to question your own perceptions afterward. Those words had been profoundly validating. I wasn't broken or foolish for struggling to trust my judgment again. I was healing from a specific type of injury to my sense of reality. My support network proved invaluable through this process. My parents, who checked in regularly without smothering. Melissa and a small circle of loyal friends who listened without judgment. The unexpected community that formed through Alexandra's series, other women rebuilding after betrayal who understood without explanation. 6 months into my healing journey, I took a solo trip to the coast, a vacation James and I had planned for after our honeymoon. I stood on the shore watching waves crash against rocks, feeling the strange mixture of grief and liberation that characterized so much of that year. By reclaiming experiences we'd planned together, I was gradually disentangling my identity from his betrayal. My memoir, The Wedding That Wasn't, Reclaiming Your Story After Betrayal, was published 9 months after the non-wedding. Writing it had been therapeutic, a way to process events while helping others. It wasn't about revenge or extending my viral moment, but about exploring the complex reality behind the headlines. The book's success surprised even my publisher. It spent 6 weeks on the bestseller list and was translated into 11 languages. More importantly, it connected me with readers worldwide who saw their own experiences reflected in mine. Your words gave me courage to leave my unfaithful husband after 20 years, wrote a woman from Arizona. I stayed quiet when I discovered my fiancé cheating. Reading your story made me realize I deserved better than hiding someone else's betrayal, shared a man from Toronto. Each message reinforced that exposing the truth had impacts beyond my personal vindication. It created space for others to examine their own situations with fresh perspective. Professional opportunities expanded in unexpected directions. My design business thrived, but I also found myself consulting on projects related to rebuilding after betrayal, contributing to Alexandra's ongoing series, speaking at conferences, even helping develop a support app for people navigating similar situations. As for James and Kimberly, I maintained strict boundaries. James made several attempts to re-establish contact, sending flowers on my birthday with cards expressing regret, emailing about closure, even appearing at my office once before my assistant turned him away. Each attempt felt less about genuine remorse and more about his need to rewrite our story in terms more flattering to him. Kimberly eventually moved back to the city, her fashion career rebuilding slowly after the initial scandal. We crossed paths once at an industry event, a moment of intense awkwardness resolved when I simply turned and walked to another part of the venue. I felt no obligation to ease her discomfort or pretend civility. Their relationship lasted 8 months before imploding spectacularly, a detail Melissa shared despite my claimed disinterest. Apparently they'd been cheating on each other, she reported with barely concealed satisfaction. Shocking, I know. I found myself feeling nothing beyond a distant acknowledgement that patterns tend to repeat. Their choices no longer affected my peace. The most unexpected development in my year of healing came in the form of Noah Bennett, an architect I met through a mutual client. Tall with kind eyes and a quiet confidence, he approached collaboration with genuine respect for my expertise, a refreshing change from James' subtle competitiveness. For months, we maintained a strictly professional relationship. I wasn't ready for more, and he never pushed. Our conversations about design concepts gradually expanded to include books, travel, and eventually, our personal histories. I found myself looking forward to project meetings, enjoying his thoughtful perspectives and subtle humor. When he finally asked me to dinner not to discuss work, I hesitated. The idea of trusting someone new felt simultaneously appealing and terrifying. I know your story, he said simply. I understand if you're not ready. But I'd like the chance to show you that not all of us break our promises. 6 months into dating Noah, I recognized the fundamental difference in how I approached this relationship. With James, I'd focused on the fairy tale, the perfect proposal, wedding, and life that would follow. With Noah, I remained firmly in reality, appreciating his kindness and integrity without projecting an idealized future. We built trust through consistency, honesty, and respect for boundaries. When insecurity occasionally surfaced, a late response to a text triggering old fears, for example, I practiced communicating directly rather than suppressing concerns. Noah responded with patience and transparency, never making me feel irrational for carrying wounds from past betrayal. Healing doesn't mean forgetting, Dr. Warren had told me. It means the pain no longer controls your choices. On the anniversary day, Noah understood my need for solitude. He sent a simple text, thinking of you. Proud of how far you've come. Here if you need anything. Standing on my balcony as evening fell, I reflected on the extraordinary year behind me. The public drama had faded, replaced by quieter, more meaningful growth. I had rebuilt my life on a foundation of self-respect and authenticity, something that wouldn't have happened if my wedding had proceeded as planned. The phone call that changed everything wasn't just about exposing betrayal or seeking justice. It was about refusing to accept less than I deserved. About choosing truth over comfortable illusions. About recognizing that sometimes, what seems like devastating loss is actually an opportunity for profound transformation. I lifted my glass in a silent toast to the woman I'd become, stronger, wiser, and genuinely grateful for the painful awakening that had set me free. The fairy tale I'd once imagined paled in comparison to the authentic life I was now creating on my own terms. And that, I realized, was the unexpected wedding gift hidden within the betrayal, the freedom to discover my true self and power. As I enjoy this moment of reflection, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately led to something better in your life? Or have you made a difficult choice that others criticized but you knew was right for you? Subscribe if you'd like to hear more stories of resilience, and share this video with someone who might need to be reminded of their own strength today. Thank you for listening to my journey. May you find the courage to honor your worth in every relationship. Remember, sometimes the most painful endings clear the path for the most beautiful beginnings.